Hey YouTube, I'm back with another video, and this time I'm continuing on my mini-series, if you will, looking through these kind of old small review books and review guides and stuff like that. So last time around I looked at the Sega Pro Master series, and this time I'm going to look at some official Nintendo magazine guides. There's a bunch of them here. I loved these back in the day, especially for these games, because most of them I had, and they were just so useful. Again, you have to remember, back in the 90s, well, even the 80s too, magazines was the kind of primary source of information or tip books to actually solve games. If you're stuck, you use these. And of course, I was a major fan of Goldeneye, back in the news again because it's coming to NSO and Xbox Live. And this was, a Bible, especially when I started out. So we'll just take a flip through. And I mean, like, these were nice little books. You see full color, detailed kind of descriptions of the objectives, talking about the various weapons and what they'd recommend you to use. Sometimes talking about enemies, sometimes having kind of like overview maps, which is very handy. And yeah, that was just so cool. I mean, just didn't have that back in the day. And I love the styling of this as well. It was very kind of like, a secret agenty style, talking about the various weapons and gadgets. It was very, very handy. And it was also kind of another way to kind of like add value to the magazines, to give you these. I mean, normally you would expect to pay for these guides. And sure, this isn't as detailed as a full walkthrough, but to be honest, it provides as much information as you would probably want to just steer you through some of the more challenging aspects of the game. I mean, there we have controls and caverns and stuff like that. They're tricky levels. So yeah, I found this one so useful. And of course, it does kind of spoil the ending a bit at the end there. And there's more. Of course, they happen to have like a top secret agent phone line that you can probably pay them for. That is still running, but there we go. That was the GoldenEye one. Very, very useful. Another one that I found useful was the Advanced Driver's Manual for Diddy Kong Racing. Again, I had this one. Now, you may notice, this was very well thumbed. This one, not so much. I mean, Diddy Kong Racing is the type of game you kind of, learn it pretty quickly. So they talk you through all the characters, some nice official artwork in most cases, and then they talk you through the levels. The most useful thing for me was the map and the indication of where the silver coins were for the silver coin challenges. They were very useful because some of them were a bit tricky and you had to plan your routes. So again, I think full color, just lovely little add-on. So I'm just kind of flicking through here to kind of give you a little flavor of what these were like. And they're so tangible as well. I mean, nowadays, you look things up on GameFAQs or IGN or wherever, and that's fine, you get your answers, but there's definitely a kind of a charm to being able to kind of flick through these. Hang on, I don't think this is going to do a whole game. It is not. Yeah, it stops after treasure, the kind of water levels, but of course, that doesn't seem to talk about defeating Wizpig and going to space, and does it even mention tricky, doing the bosses? So this is not complete. Because it says it's the ultimate guide, every power-up and whatnot, but I don't think it is. Yes, this is not a complete guide. I think N64 magazine might have done more in their own magazine on this, but it was still useful. Next up is a game that I didn't actually play, and you might notice it's also a change in style. They've actually now, instead of gone for kind of a broader book like that, they've gone for something that is more shaped like the boxes, and they even use the same artwork as the box, except with a big free tips book. And this is a series, like this is number 6, and they kind of did it supposedly for the kind of Nintendo awesome games. So basically Nintendo first party stuff more often than not. And I mean, it follows the same format. It's a bit tighter in print and maybe a little less space, but it talks about the boards, the riders. I do think they have some map. Yeah, so there you have your map and the kind of points of interest and what to do, and even the gold rider there and all that sort of stuff. So again, it's nice. They got the tips, quick tips at the bottom. So just flicking through these quickly. That was 1080. That one I did not own. I own it now, but I didn't own it at the time. Another one, actually you can kind of tell. This one again, a bit more heavily thumbed. This one, not so much. I read it, but I didn't have the game, so I quickly put it aside. This one I had the game, so it's a bit more thumbed. And it actually follows exactly the same format where, you have your various map overviews. They're not as detailed, say, as the Diddy Kong Racing one, a big picture with all the kind of items on it. And they talk about the kind of various cornering techniques. Now, when I say corner techniques, it's not like the advanced techniques that you'd see today in speedrunning, community and all that sort of stuff. But for the time, it certainly kind of gave you enough to get going. Very hard game, though. You do need the tips, and you need to learn the various braking styles. Worth checking out on NSO or original kart if you have it. I actually prefer this to GX. I think it's just easier to kind of focus on the speed and the layout without the kind of visual noise that goes on in GX. And also GX is a bit more brutal, which is saying something, because this is pretty brutal. Talk about the death race and how to rack up kills as well, which is an interesting little oddity. And the multiplayer, I guess that's folks from the mag there in the corner. And again, hey, there's cheats, and here you can use your cheats. And they do touch on the X Cup, I guess. So multiplayer X Cup would be nuts. Randomly generated tracks. So they talk about next month is going to be Ocarina of Time. And it's true. The next month was Ocarina of Time. Now, I didn't buy the official magazine all that much, so that's why I only have a few of these, and this is the last one I have. Ocarina of Time, again, was a huge one. 97% game of the decade. Well earned. And again, you have your screenshots, you have a lot of tips, you got like, hey, here's Hyrule Field, and here's the various points of interest, and stuff like that. Ball strategies such as the Dongle Cavern here, and here's the Fairy Fountain, and whatnot. And the thing about Ocarina of Time, of course, is it's a rather large game. So even doing, all these very kind of short mini-maps and short descriptions and whatnot, there's only so much you can cover in 32 pages, and they only covered up to the Forest Temple, and don't forget, part 2 is next month. So this one actually was so big they needed 2 months. But anyway, there we have it. There's a few kind of Nintendo magazine official kind of little extra guides. Super handy back in the day. Of course, today you can just Google all of this, but it's nice to have just a little bit more for the collection. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you again soon.